Oh. You ready?
Ready.
I'm sorry. All right. Okay. Is there any way we can turn those lights, the back lights off? All right. Perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Just back it up.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second Crossroads Psychological Associates Free Talks on Parenting. This is the second in our speaker series. I'm David Gold. I'm one of the psychologists at Crossroads. I've been here at Crossroads since 1995. Believe it or not. I don't think I've done anything that long. I've been doing this my entire life. And I've been a partner at Crossroads since 2005. Today we're going to be talking, as you can see, about not just discipline, but effective discipline. All right? Couple of disclaimers before we start. Kind of the nature of these talks is often we will get questions from either people in the audience or people who are watching online. If you're watching online and you do have a question, just put it in the chat, and I'll do my best to get to it. The nature of a lot of these questions are going to be very specific to individual families and individual kiddos. So I'll do my best to answer the questions as I can, but they'll probably be a little bit more general answers as opposed to specific. Right? So without any further ado, let me get started. In some ways, this is the most important slide in the entire talk. There's not just one right, correct way to parent. Okay? We're going to talk about a couple of perspectives, a couple of mindsets, if you will, about parenting today. But there's not just one right way to do it. Okay? Let's go on to the next one. This is just one of my favorite quotes about parenting. It's by Mark Twain. When I was 16, I thought my father was an idiot. When I turned 21, I realized how much he had learned in 5 years. Okay? So when we talk about parenting, or when we talk about discipline rather, I am less concerned with the specific strategies, the specific concrete things that we do as parents, and I'm much more concerned about kind of the mindset you have, the way you're looking at things, and the way you're looking at the structure of your family. Okay. So a couple of things to keep in mind when we are disciplining. When I talk with parents in our office and ask what's the goal of disciplining, why are we doing it, everyone focuses on behavior. Discipline is much more than solely controlling behavior or shaping behavior. It's not that that's unimportant, but that's only one part of it. The other things that I want us to be thinking about when we are disciplining and structuring our kids, it's about the communication patterns. What is it that we're communicating? How are we communicating? Emotional regulation. We're going to spend a lot of time on this. Okay? And that's a little bit more than just calming somebody down. One of the purposes of discipline is to really communicate and assert the structure of the family and the hierarchy of the family. And discipline is not meant just to get rid of conflict. Do this because I say so. Discipline actually helps us to manage conflict, to use conflict in a constructive way, and to help our kids learn themselves how to deal with conflict throughout their lives. So, moving on. This is just one of my favorite comments. It's from the far side about communication. It says, what we say to dogs, okay, Ginger, I've had it. You stay out of the garbage. Understand, Ginger? Stay out of the garbage. And what they hear, blah, blah, Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 blah. There's a big difference between what we say and what other people hear. So this is a good one to keep in mind. Okay. So, communication. We communicate to convey at least 3 different things. First is one that everyone thinks about. That's to convey the content of what we're talking about. Could you pick me up at 5 o'clock? When is the homework due? There's a big hairy spider crawling up your arm. Okay? That's all content. In addition to that, we communicate to convey emotion. I wonder how many of you tell your kids every day that you love them. Okay? My kids are 20 and 24. Whenever I speak with them, I tell them that I love them. By this point, I think they get it. That's not new information, either for my kids or for your kids. We still tell them that, and that's a good thing. We want them to feel that emotion when we say it. It's not the information. We want them to experience that feeling. We also communicate to convey connection. What do I mean by that? Later this week is Thanksgiving, and I'm going up to my brother's in Connecticut for Thanksgiving. I'm going to be one of those millions of people driving north on I-95. My brother's 13 years older than me. Okay? And when I go up there, I am planning on having the following discussion with my brother. We are going to discuss specifically why Willie Mays is better than Mickey Mantle. Okay? Now, let's talk about a couple of things here. They're both retired. In fact, they both passed away. Neither one has played Major League Baseball since 1973. There is nothing new to say. Okay? Secondly, I mentioned my brother's 13 years older than me. Everything I know about this, my brother taught me when I was 8. And I am doing nothing more than just repeating back to my brother what he taught me when I was 8 years old. To make it even worse, he and I have had this discussion hundreds of times. Okay? My kids will be sitting there on the side watching this, throwing popcorn and laughing at us while we have this discussion. Okay? We've said it all before and there's nothing new to say. Why am I looking forward to this? It's because that's how I always feel close and connected to my brother. We talk about sports, we talk about baseball, and specifically his favorite baseball player, Willie Mays. It's not about the information, but this is how he and I feel close and connected to each other. And that's worth the price of admission. Okay? Ways to improve our communication with our kiddos. If all we do is communicate to them about things that are our agenda, that we're interested in, they're going to start tuning us out. Okay? They're not going to listen as well, they're not going to be as interested. We need to invest some time and some effort and some energy in communicating with them, talking with them, listening to them. Remember, communication is a two-way street. About the things that they're interested in. A lot of us, when our kids were little, we'd watch Sesame Street with them. Okay? It wasn't because we enjoyed Sesame Street, although I don't dislike it. It's because they were interested in it. I was more than willing to do this because they were interested in it. Think of that mindset. Now when they get a little bit older, if they're interested in this video game, this movie or TV show, even if I'm not necessarily interested in this video game or this TV show, the same reasons that I watch Sesame Street with them, I should listen to them, maybe even sit down and watch this TV show with them. Okay? I want to get them into the mindset, into their perspective of communicating with the parent is not a bad thing. Listening, interacting with the parent is not a bad thing. They can actually enjoy it. Okay? It's a lot easier for me to get them to listen to me if I help them to feel that I listen to them. One of the best strategies I can give parents is before you even get to the discipline, okay, you want to work on the communication and develop good patterns of communication, especially when they become teenagers. Take your kids out for food once a week, just one-on-one, you and your son, you and your daughter. Do it over food. Take them to the diner, order cheeseburgers or order milkshakes. And the rule while you're out for food during these times is you can't talk about problems. All you can do is just talk with them about whatever they want to talk about. Relationships, boys, girls, music, movies, sports, boys, girls, whatever it is they want to talk about. Okay? And show you that you're interested in what they have to say. That's going to go a long way towards helping them to listen to, take a little bit more seriously the things that you have to say, what you need to say. So when we're disciplining, again, discipline is more than just control of behavior. I want to be thinking about what we're communicating and how we're communicating. Emotional regulation, I mentioned that we're going to talk a lot about this. Okay? So this is the way your brain works. Typically, when things are calm, we take in sensory information through our senses. This information travels up our central nervous system to our brains, and it comes into a part of our brain in the midbrain called the amygdala. It's right about here, okay? The amygdala does a quick and dirty assessment, quick and dirty triage of this information. All it does is it assesses, is there threat in the environment? Is there no threat? If there's no threat, things are calm. That information gets relayed up to your frontal lobe. This is where all the higher order cognitive stuff happens. This is evaluation, this is synthesis, this is judgment, okay? The frontal lobe processes this information, you make decisions about things, that information goes to your motor cortex, and then you do whatever it is you're going to do, okay? That's when things are calm. That's how your brain typically works. However, if there is threat, everything changes. If the amygdala perceives threat in the environment, rather than having the information go to your frontal lobe to be assessed, this is offline, no information goes to it. And instead, the information goes straight to your motor cortex, and we react. We react impulsively, we react reflexively, we react instinctively, okay? And our reactions are either we prepare to run away from the threat to save ourselves, or to fight to save ourselves. A lot of you have probably heard this term, fight or flight. That's what's going on. That's our amygdala reacting and telling us run away to save ourselves, or get ready to fight to try to save ourselves. Okay? The important thing about this is when we go into fight or flight, the frontal lobe is offline. So when you try to reason and logic with someone, especially a kiddo, who is upset, who's emotionally dysregulated, which is, a fancy term for they are in fight or flight, okay? We're trying to reason with them, we're trying to logic them, and this is offline, it's just bouncing off, okay? Before we can get them to hear anything, before we can get them to use this part of their brains, we need to help them get out of fight or flight. We need to help them emotionally regulate. We need to help them calm down. We're going to talk about some different ways to do that. But they can't hear us, they can't think about things if this is offline. Okay? Now, here's the important thing to remember about us as a species. Humans are very social. Okay? We used to live in herds. Okay? We perceive threat not just when it's physical threat, but when it's social or emotional threat. If I'm feeling embarrassed, if I'm feeling rejected, if I'm feeling abandoned, I perceive that as threat, and I go right into fight or flight. Okay? That's what's happening with our kiddos a lot when they get upset. A lot of the quote-unquote threat or danger they're feeling, when they're perceiving, is this social emotional threat. But it's just as real, and concretely, neurologically, the same thing happens in our brains. Okay? Now, before I can talk to someone, I need to help them to calm down. Come out of fight or flight, to emotionally regulate. How many times have I made the mistake and raised my voice at my kids and basically said, be quiet and calm down? That's usually not helpful. Okay? If I am emotionally dysregulated, I can't help anyone else calm down. Before I can calm down my kiddo and help them emotionally regulate, I myself need to be emotionally regulated. How many of you have ever picked up a crying child when they're like 6 months old, when they're pre-verbal? Okay. You pick them up, and in order to calm them, you hold them here, and you say really intelligent things, such as, there, it's okay, sha. But it works, it's helpful. There's no logic, there's no reason. This is a purely emotional interaction to help their nervous systems regulate and to bring them out of fight or flight. Okay? It's not solving a problem, it's helping to emotionally regulate. If we look at discipline solely as trying to control behavior, and one of our kids is in fight or flight, and we start telling them, do this, do this, do this, it's not going to work. We raise our voices, they're going to feel more dysregulated. If we start threatening, they perceive more threat, they're more dysregulated. We need to help them to emotionally regulate and come out of fight or flight first before we can really talk with them. And discipline's more about just behavior. In some ways, it's about helping them get out of fight or flight. The family hierarchy. So first, right up front, families are not democracies. They're dictatorships. Hopefully they're benevolent dictatorships, but they are dictatorships. You have the parents, and then you have the rest of us. Okay? By the way, the rest of us include brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, teachers, principals, psychologists. Okay? Parents are in charge of the family, and the rest of us are down here. And that's okay. That's the way it should be. One of the purposes of effective discipline is to assert this hierarchy, that it's parents and then the rest of us. Okay? We keep this hierarchy because that actually frees us up and enables us as parents to do the parenting that we need to do. Okay? Couple of examples of this, okay? And so I shall ask my family, what's the difference between flexible and inconsistent? Okay. To me, the answer is flexible is when I, as the parent, have a rule. You're supposed to do your homework before we do anything fun. Okay? And flexible is I, as the parent, decide I'm going to make an exception. Or rather, we as parents decide we're going to make an exception. That's fun, that's fun. I go to work, someone gives me a couple of Orioles tickets. That's the fun part. That's the stuff your kids are going to remember. I come home and I say, don't worry about the homework tonight. We're going to go to Camden Yards. Okay? Inconsistent is when I or we as the parents have a rule and someone else tries to change that rule or push us off of that. That's when they browbeat us. They keep talking, they keep poking, please, 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 please. And then we give in because we're being pushed. That's inconsistent. Okay? It's the same difference between explaining and justifying. Explaining is when I, as the parent, decide I want to give information, I want to teach. Okay? Justifying is back in third grade when I got called to the board to do long division. And I got up there and I had no idea what to say, but I'm trying to do something and explain something before I'm ready, before I'm prepared. Okay? What we're really talking about is proactive versus reactive. Flexible, explaining, being proactive. That is an inherently strong, secure position. I'm strong enough to make a decision. This is what it's going to be. Especially if you look at this in comparison with being reactive. When someone cajoles me and talks me out of something, that's an inherently weak position. Okay? We want to stay proactive as opposed to reactive. Let me follow up a little bit on this kind of strong position versus inherently weak position. Okay? If we were to play basketball, who would you like on your team? Would you like to have Michael Jordan on your team, or would you like to have me on your team? That's a pretty easy decision, okay? Michael Jordan's good at this. He's a really, really, really strong player. He's the guy who's going to have your back, who's going to be able to help you, who's going to be able to make you successful. Me, you're just not going to get much help no matter how much I try, okay? We want to present ourselves to our kids not as overbearing, not as angry, but as strong enough to be able to take care of them. Okay? If we come across as reactive, that's an inherently weak position. Okay? If someone else pushes my buttons and in a reactive way I blow up, I can be loud, I can be scared, but it's still a reactive and therefore a weak position. That doesn't inspire confidence, comfort, and security in my kids. Okay? I should go back a little more. This bottom one here, a lot of times we do, this kind of goes into the structure of hierarchy of the family. I'll have families come in my office a lot and they will talk about, they'll argue about something at home. What they're really arguing about is, what was the right decision? Should you do this? Should you do this? And a kid or teenager is arguing this is right, and parents are arguing this is right. Sometimes it's easier to change the question as opposed to trying to figure out who's right or wrong. Sometimes the better question is, whose decision should it be? Okay. Let me illustrate this. Several years ago, I was coming to work one morning, and of course I was running late. And I come running downstairs through the kitchen and towards the door to the garage. And as I'm running through, my son looks at me and says, "Dad, your tie doesn't match." Okay. Now first, he was right. Objectively, he was just right. Okay? I was worried about being late. I kept going. And we were talking about this later on that night. We were saying, but the tie didn't match. Why didn't you change it? You were wrong. You should have changed the tie. It wasn't about whether he was right or wrong about the tie match. My point was not that the tie matched. Believe me, it didn't match, okay? My point was, it was my decision about whether I was going to choose to go better or to try to be on time. Okay? He didn't agree with my decision, but he could agree that that should be my decision. When it's my decision even if I'm wrong. Okay? Now, when we talk about this one here, whose decision should it be? Realize sometimes the answer is going to be, yes, it should be the parent's decision. Sometimes the right answer is going to be, it should be the kid's or the teenager's decision, even if we think they're making the wrong decision. Okay? So this is a little bit of a double-edged sword. When we bring it up, we need to follow through. If we decide it's our kid's decision, we need to let them make that decision, even if we think it's the wrong decision. Okay? Let's move on. So, managing conflict. First, my starting point is that conflict is good. Some of you in my generation might remember the movie Wall Street, with Michael Douglas's character Gordon Gekko, who did this famous speech, "Greed is good." Well, my version is conflict is good. Okay? Conflict is good because it teaches assertiveness and confidence. Okay? And in some ways, it's kind of like emotional weightlifting. When we weightlift, we are strengthening our muscles by using them repeatedly against something with resistance, the weight of the weights. Okay? If we're talking now about emotional muscles of confidence, of being assertive, okay, these need to be exercised as well against a little bit of resistance. And in some way, we talk about parents being strong enough for our kiddos to push against us. Okay? Now, it is hard to have a conflict in a good, solid, respectful, mature way. Okay? A lot of us are still working on that. Okay? I don't expect any kid, or even most teenagers, to know how to do that and be good at it. I want us to have these conflicts. I want us to teach our kids and teenagers how to have these conflicts. Okay? but I'm under no illusion, I'm not expecting them to be good at it. When I say we need to have these and teach them, the starting point is they're not going to be good at it. We need to expect that, we need to accept that. We shouldn't get mad at our kids for not being good at something we shouldn't expect them to be good at. Okay? That doesn't mean we let it go. Okay? And we do want to teach them about being respectful and not raising their voices and this and this and this. I'm just saying we should also expect them to have some difficulties with that and to make a bunch of mistakes along the way as they're getting there. Right? So let's talk about 2-year-olds. Talk about 2-year-olds testing. How many of you have heard the term labeled the terrible twos? Okay? Whenever someone says it, when we talk about the terrible twos, someone on the other side of the room will say, 2-year-olds are terrible because they're testing. Okay? What is it that they're testing? 2-year-olds are not testing what they can get away with. Okay? 2-year-olds as a species are smarter than adults, so they can get away with whatever they want. That's not what they're trying to do. A 2-year-old will look right at you when they are disobeying you and do whatever it is you're telling them not to do. Okay? That's not trying to get away with it. That's what are you going to do about it? Okay? Are you going to get angry? Are you going to get mad? Are you going to chew me up and spit me out? Are you going to reject me? Are you going to not be there for me? Is there a point that gets you so angry that you won't be there to take care of me? That you will reject me and abandon me? That's what they're testing. They are testing the safety and the security of the relationship. Okay? The healthy resolution of this is, I've gotten my parents really bad, and there is no point at which they're going to reject me and get rid of me. Okay? But they're going to keep testing them. They're going to keep testing them. Now, if we as parents understand that and we kind of, use the strategy, I know what's going on. I'm going to stay above it. I'm not going to get drawn into this. Okay? That doesn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. In those cases, the 2-year-old never gets the emotion flowing and never can experientially see, wow, Dad got really mad, but he's still there for me. Okay? So we need to, as parents, play into this the right amount to show some real emotion, to show some anger. Anger's okay. Okay? They're going to be angry. We need to model for them how to handle anger. We need to get pulled into the angry and show them that even when we're angry, we're still there for them. I have bellowed at my kids at various ages. I love you, I will always love you, but right now I am furious at you. That's the message. Okay. One of the metaphors is that of a safety net. Okay? And this kind of lines up with what we were talking about before, with being strong enough to take care of your kids. Okay? So if you're a trapeze artist and you're in a circus and you go to the next town and they set up your tent and they set up the trapeze, before you go up on the trapeze and do anything, you're going to want them to set up the safety net underneath. Okay? And even when they set it up, before you go up there, you're going to go over and test the safety net. And you're not going to go over to the net and go, yep, that looks good, now I'm going to jump it. You're going to go over and you're going to tug it and pull it and really push it and put it through the paces as much as you can to make sure that net is strong enough to take care of you and keep you safe. That's what our kiddos are doing. Okay? So a lot of this is about safety and security. Let me bring it back to discipline. When we're disciplining our kids, okay, it's not just about controlling behavior, it is also about helping them develop this sense of safety and security, and not disciplining them in a way that rips apart this safety and security. Okay? couple of metaphors just to keep in mind as we're doing this. Okay? My office is just about 2 blocks away. I have a couch in the office. I'm a psychologist, of course I have a couch in the office. Okay? So imagine that you're sitting there in my office, sitting on the couch, and I say something annoying, and you get frustrated, and you get angry, and you kind of work, and you turn around, and you punch the back of the couch. How many of those you punch the pillow or something? You punch the back of the couch. Think for a minute how that would feel. It's a little bit of a release, but nothing bad happens. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is, you're in my office, and I say the same annoying, stupid thing. And this time, instead of punching the couch, you go out the back door of my office into our courtyard while it is snowing, and you punch the snowflakes as they are falling from the sky. Think what that feels like. Okay? Third scenario, I say the same dumb thing, I get you annoyed, and instead of going back, instead of punching the couch, now you go to my window and you punch the glass window. Right? The third one you're not going to do. I couldn't pay you to do it. It's too dangerous. Okay? The second one, there's not enough resistance. That's going to be more frustrating. Okay? The first one, there is some resistance. You get to release your frustration or anger a little bit. Okay? But the couch is also setting a very safe boundary. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to punch through the couch and hurt your fist against the wall. Okay? We want to be safe enough for our kids to push against us, but to set a boundary. We don't want to be kind of wishy-washy enough and just fall back and cave like the snowflakes. That doesn't help them to feel safe and secure. We also don't want to be overly reactive and hurtful and harmful and punitive, okay, like the glass window. Right. Move on to the next. Yeah, let's move on to this. Let's move on to this. So there are different styles of parenting. Okay. Sometimes you talk about these in terms of different styles of leadership, but I'm going to talk about them in terms of parenting. There's laissez-faire, which is very permissive. There's authoritative, which is sometimes talked about as democratic. There's also authoritarian, which is a little bit more dictatorial. Okay? And it's no coincidence that authoritative and authoritarian actually sound very similar. Okay? So I used to work at this summer camp. That's how I came into this whole field. And for staff training, we would take the whole staff and we would do this exercise. Okay? We would divide them up into 3 groups, and the groups would rotate to 3 different stations. And at the first station, we had like Lincoln Logs or something like that. Second station, we had Legos. Third station, we had building blocks. And at each one, they were supposed to build something. And there was a facilitator there at each station. Okay? So they go into the first station, and the facilitator is sitting there on a chair, reading a magazine, not saying anything. And after a little bit, someone in the group will say, well, do you want us to do something? They said, yeah, if you like. And that's all. Sometimes they would build something, sometimes they wouldn't. Then they go to the second one. They come in, and there's a facilitator there, and the facilitator will say, good, let's build something, okay? What are some of our options? You have an idea, good. You have an idea, good. That's great. Let's talk about these. Let's vote on them. Okay, we're going to do this one. Who wants to do this part? Good. Raise your hand. You'll do this part. Who wants to do this part? And they build something. Okay. Then they go to the third one. For some reason, they always made me the facilitator at this third station. Okay. So the group would come in, and I'd be very polite. I'd say, I'm glad you're here. Come on and sit down. No, actually, I'd like you to stand up against the corner. I want you to move over and sit in this chair. You can turn around and face the back. Okay, good. Now let's build something. I'd like you to pick up a block. Please pick up a blue block. Use these 2 fingers, pick up the blue block. I'd like you turn around. You pick up the green block, put it on top of the blue, turn it 90 degrees. Good. And you kind of see how that goes. Okay? Then we get together and we will talk. Okay? The questions would be, which of these have facilitated the best communication between the group and the facilitator? Most people will say number 2. Question, which of these had the best communication just among the group members? Most people will say number 2. Which of these had the worst communication? And people go back and forth, but it's usually either 1 or 3. Which had the worst communication within the group, same thing. Which one of these had the best results? Right? People typically say number 2. Which one of these did people enjoy the most? Sometimes people will say number 1, sometimes people will say number 2. Or most of the time people will say number 2. Then you have the curveball question. Which is the best leadership style or the best parenting style? And you kind of told everybody, and of course everyone says number 2. That's not the answer. The answer is all 3 at different times. And a good leader, a good parent, can go from one kind of wearing one hat to another and switch styles depending on the situation. Most of the time I am in number 2. I think that's a really good default mode, good default style. But sometimes if it's a Saturday afternoon, we're just hanging out, we don't have anything to do, I'm definitely in style number 1. You guys can go do whatever you want. That's okay, you guys decide. There are some times I am clearly both feet squarely in number 3, and I'm a little authoritarian dictator. When we go to the beach, when we go to Ocean City, and they go in the waves, I'm the guy sitting there saying, move back to the left, move back, no, 2 more steps, more to the left, more to the left. You know, I want them standing here as opposed to here. And I can be kind of rigid about it because it's a safety issue. And I think that's the right thing to do in that situation. Okay? It's good to have these different styles, but we want to be able to use all of them, to pick and choose the right club in the bag to mix my metaphors. Okay? So reinforcement. Reinforcement, sometimes people talk about this as a reward, okay, by death. But actually, before I even do this, let me do a quick anecdote. So I was in the office one time, and I went out to the waiting room to grab my next kid. It's this little 6-year-old guy, wonderful kid who had ADHD. So I walk out to the waiting room and say, hey, Johnny, come on back. And he goes running past me, flying down the hallway into my office. And by the time I get into my office, he's sitting in my chair, spinning around and around and around. So he's like, hey, Johnny, could you stop spinning around? And he smiled and he stopped spinning around. And he started bouncing up and down on the chair. I said, hey, Johnny, could you stop bouncing up and down? Sure, Dr. Gold. And then he starts pounding on my desk. Hey, Johnny, could you stop pounding on the desk? Sure. And he starts pounding on the computer. Hey, Johnny, could you stop pounding on the computer? He was cheerful. He was polite. He was doing everything I asked. And I was ready to throttle this poor child, okay? The problem was, I was telling him what not to do. That leaves a hole, that leaves a void. And Johnny was really good at filling that void, okay? Punishment by definition teaches what not to do. Reinforcement by definition teaches what to do. It increases the likelihood of doing certain behavior, okay? If we just do punishment, we leave a hole. And then it's just a complete chance of what they're going to fill it with. You need the right balance, okay, between punishment, which we'll get to in a little bit, and reinforcement. Okay? Reinforcement can be positive or negative. You can either give somebody something that they like to increase the likelihood behavior is going to be emitted, or we can take away something negative, something noxious to increase the likelihood. Okay? The example I always use with my kids is if I'm singing at them, and I want to reinforce them, I will stop singing when they do what I want them to do. That's very reinforcing. I'm terrible thing. Reinforcement only works if you can give the child the reinforcement. Okay? You want to be a little bit open and liberal with giving the reinforcement. If you go to the Baltimore Aquarium, and they used to have the dolphin shows, and they teach the dolphins, they swim around the big tank like 3 times, they go in the water, and they jump up and they hit the ball in the middle. Okay? The way they do that is, they don't wait for them to swim around 3 times and go underwater and jump up, and then reinforce them with the fish. They start with, when they just swim from here to here, reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Then when they go from here to here, reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. They use a lot of reinforcers, and they do it in very small steps to get the dolphins to do what they want. Well, we want to reinforce our children. We can't wait till they do this big, huge series of complex behaviors. Sometimes we need to break it down into very small little steps and reinforce each of those. Once they get that, then we reinforce the next step. Okay? But the reinforcer has power only when we use it, only when we give it to them. Remember, I was talking about having the right mindset as we're disciplining our kids. Okay? Thinking about reinforcement, this gives us a structure to focus on the positives. It's not just what they're doing wrong. This is what they're doing well. This is what they're doing right. Okay? So, my sister, I don't know what's going on with her, but she doesn't like chocolate. She likes broccoli. Okay? Chocolate is not reinforcing for this individual. I don't know how she's part of my family. Broccoli is reinforcing for her. The point is, different things are reinforcing for different people. And only a given individual, only our children know what's reinforcing for them. Okay? Now, if you think about it, you give me, M&Ms, I'll do whatever you want. Okay? I like chocolate. I'm the normal one. Okay? But even if you keep giving me M&Ms, if you keep giving me chocolate, I'm going to get a little tired of the chocolate. I'm going to want Skittles. Okay? The point is, we get tired of things. And we need to rotate reinforcers. Okay? A lot of us parents, we set up kind of these reward charts when the kids are real little, and they work like a charm for like the first week, and then they fall apart. Most of that is because they get used to whatever we're giving them as a reinforcer, and it's no longer reinforcing. So we need to rotate through the reinforcers. Either that, or you give them something that they can, points, stars, check marks, whatever, money, a nickel, a penny, whatever it is, that they can then trade in for different things. And these things they traded in for, you can have a menu, and they will in effect rotate themselves to different reinforcers. One of the things that's real powerful is kind of out of the blue, catch them being good. Even if you have to manipulate the situation, I'm fine with that. Catch them being good and say, hey, that was great. Here, reinforcer. Okay? It's called a variable schedule of reinforcement. We're teaching that every now and then, if they do something good, they're going to get a reward. These variable schedules of reinforcement, where you don't get reinforced all the time, just kind of sometimes, are incredibly powerful. This is why slot machines work in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. There's always a chance you're going to win. And if you don't win the next time, that doesn't mean there's not a chance you're going to get the reward after that. It's incredibly powerful, and I can add that in. Right? Again, remember the topic of this talk is discipline. Discipline's not just punishment. This right here is an incredibly effective way of addressing, controlling, modeling, and shaping behavior, even though it's not punishment. Okay? In some ways, to me, the rubber meets the road, if you will, with rewards and reinforcement, is it helps you to focus on the positive. And this is a way of getting you and your child to the point where you can sit down and just talk together. You start talking about what they're doing well, now you have your attention, now you can talk about other things. You know, that's the good part of parenting. That's what we want to get to. Okay? There is still a place for punishment. We're going to get there. Okay? Punishment by itself is not going to be real effective. You need punishment in addition to this type of reinforcement. Okay? Let's move on. So before we do punishment, one other thing to do first, and that's going to be timeout. Okay? And a lot of people have heard about this magic 1, 2, 3 timeout, which is really, really good. I'm going to talk a little bit about a variant on that. What I'm going to talk about is not exactly magic 1, 2, 3. Okay? Timeout deals with what they call the coercive behavior cycle. Coercive behavior cycle is I ask my child to do something, they don't do it, and they get mad. I get mad in response. They get angrier, I get angrier, and so forth. This is the cycle, where we're cycling into more anger, less listening, more fight or flight. This is offline, nothing good is happening. We use timeout to stop this coercive behavior cycle. We use timeout to stop a particular behavior, to start a different behavior, and or to get someone out of this fight or flight and to help them to emotionally regulate. Okay? That's the key. It's about emotional regulation. So I mentioned Michael Jordan before. I think it was 1993 when the Chicago Bulls won their third championship. The Bulls had the ball. They were down by 1 with like 15 seconds left, and they're bringing the ball up the court. And the coach of the Bulls called a timeout. Okay? It was not because Michael Jordan was being naughty and misbehaving. It was also not that the coach had any illusions that he was going to teach Michael Jordan or anyone else on the team something new. And by the way, calling a timeout was the right thing to do. He called the timeout so he could get everyone on the same page, every one of them calm down, thinking about the right things, proactively, not reactively, not emotionally dysregulated, okay? Having the right mindset, thinking about the right things. Okay? That's why I call it timeout. It wasn't a punishment. It was emotional regulation, getting everyone thinking about the right things in the right way. Okay? That's what timeout is for. So the way we do timeout is you designate some place in your house, this chair, this sofa, this cushion, the bottom step on the stairs, whatever it is, that's timeout. And Johnny will be doing something, and you say, hey, Johnny, please stop doing that. There was some comment. Johnny, please stop doing that. If he doesn't, you say, Johnny, stop doing that. That's one. Show him one thing. If he stops, great, everyone wins. In fact, reinforce that previously. If Johnny doesn't stop, I say, Johnny, please stop that. That's 2. He stops again, great, we reinforce that. If not, say, Johnny, I ask you to stop that. That's 3. Now you're in timeout. You're walking over to timeout. There are some methods of timeout that will tell you someone needs to stay in timeout for 1 minute for each year of their life. For the 3-year-old, you need to make them stay in timeout for 3 minutes. And once timeout is done, they come out and they need to do what you're asking them to do. If not, they go right back into timeout. Okay? If I'm trying to get a 3-year-old to do something, okay, and they don't want to, and they have a tantrum, and I'm going to try to keep them sitting in this chair over here for 3 minutes, and then they get out and I ask them to do it, and they don't do it, and I need to put them back in for another 3 minutes, and so forth, I'm going to give up. I want to make this user-friendly. I don't want this to be a punishment. It's emotional regulation. It's not supposed to, it's not supposed to get us more dysregulated and be frustrated and upset, either us or our kids. It's supposed to help calm it down. I want timeout to be user-friendly. I don't even want it to be something they don't want to do. I'll put someone in timeout for 30 seconds, 20 seconds. They want to bring a book with them to timeout. They want to bring a stuffed animal to timeout. I'm fine with that. The purpose of timeout is not for that to be something they want to avoid. Okay? I love it when kids put themselves in timeout. That's great. It's a mechanism to help them emotionally regulate and to come out of fight or flight. Okay? I'm not going to get nitpicky about are they sitting still in timeout. Okay, if this is timeout and they're handed it, I'm okay with that. If it helps them to emotionally regulate, and then they come out and do what I'm going to do. It's about calming the situation down. Timeout is not about control over behavior. Okay? We can play around with the parameters, where it is, how long they have to be in timeout, so forth. I go to the grocery store and I see parents trying to put kids in timeout all the time in the grocery store. I'm okay with that. What you want to do is develop this at home. This is the timeout procedure. That's timeout. When I say timeout, you go to timeout, okay? Get good at it at home. If then you want to apply it someplace else, you just start with, hey Johnny, you see the corn flakes over there in that aisle? That's timeout. Please stop. That's one. And then you just go through the whole thing. Okay? Now again, remember what I said about emotional regulation or dysregulation. If I'm yelling at my kid to stop, timeout isn't going to calm them down. Timeout, it's about emotional regulation, and you do this in a way so that it's calming for the parent. You do it so that once you pull out this technique, once you pull out this strategy, you know there's only one way it's going to end, with them doing what you want. So I want it to feel to the parent, once I do this, I've already won and I can calm down. Once they come out of timeout, they have to do what I asked. If they don't, they go back into timeout. Yeah, just for another 30 seconds. They come out, they need to do what I asked. If not, they go back in. If it's only 30 seconds, I can do this 4, 5, 6 times. And it's not stressful for them. It doesn't take up a lot of time. It's more user-friendly for the parent. And that's part of what I'm going for. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Punishment. Notice I've been talking for about 55 minutes, and only now are we getting to punishment. Punishment is not the same as discipline. It's a very effective tool. It's okay to use. But this isn't your most powerful tool. It's part of it. This doesn't have to be your go-to. You want to have everything else in addition to it. Okay? So remember, punishment is something that decreases the likelihood that a certain behavior will be repeated. And again, just like reinforcement, it can be positive or negative. We can add something that the child doesn't like, or we can take away something that they do like. Either of those can be punishment. I want to draw the distinction between punishment and punitive. Punishment is a Shrink's word. It's a psychological word, and it means decreasing the likelihood that a certain behavior is going to be repeated. Punitive is hurtful. Punitive is painful. Punitive is harmful. I'm good with decreasing this behavior. I don't want it to be painful, harmful, hurtful. I don't want the punishment to necessarily be punitive. Okay? Now, I get it that sometimes punitive is in the eye of the beholder. Okay? If I ground my teenager, okay, for a weekend, and they miss the greatest party of all time that everyone in the world is going to be at, okay, because they're grounded, I understand they can think it, even if I don't think it's punitive. Okay? But at the very least, I want the parents, I want us thinking, I want to decrease the behavior, I want punishment, I don't want to try to be punitive. Okay? Now, a lot of times you read books and they will say that the punishment has to be proximal in time to when the behavior happened. Kid does the behavior, do punishment right then and there so they can pair them together. Okay? And that is important. You do have to do this when the kids are little. Okay? As they get older, you can communicate to them that, this behavior is matched with this punishment, even though this punishment didn't come right away. Okay? And I like having some time in between for a couple of reasons. Okay? One, I don't want to be reactive. Remember that reactivity, that's an inherently weak position, and we just undermine ourselves. I had a parent one time, it was the last day of school, and their 16-year-old went out with some friends and broke curfew, and this parent was furious. He couldn't believe the very first night his daughter stayed out past curfew. And when she came back that night, he was furious. He looked at her and he grounded her from summer. And he came in like the next week and he wanted to talk to me first before his daughter came in and said, "You gotta help me. How do I get out of this? I don't want to ground you for the summer." Okay? He was in a very reactive mood. Don't decide on a punishment while you're angry. Okay? It's okay to wait. Similarly, when we're talking about co-parenting, if I want to give a punishment to my kid, more than likely, the other parent's going to have to enforce that as well as me. Okay? It is often very, very helpful. It's often necessary for the parents to talk together before they decide on the punishment. Okay? You have a significantly greater chance of the other parent supporting you and following through on the punishment you want to give if you talk with them first. Okay? Similarly, this is going to help them to talk to you first when they do something. Right? So we don't want to be reactive, and you want to do this in a way where you can get support from a person who's co-parenting with you. Okay? I am fine with, okay, that does it, you're punished, and I'm going to tell you what it is later, tonight, in an hour, when your mom gets home, when your dad gets home. I'm fine with that. You can say, what just happened, how many times I told you, don't light your brother on fire, you're punished. But I'm going to tell you what it is later, because if I decided now, it wouldn't be good. Right? Let's do one more, and then we're going to wrap up, okay? Support for parents. And as it says here, this might be the most important topic in this whole talk. Parenting is hard, okay? And there's no manual for it. Yeah, there are all these books out there. There's no manual for parenting, and it's really difficult. It's difficult in terms of time, in terms of lack of sleep. It's difficult emotionally. And all of us need support, okay? One of the things about parenting is, well, think about this one. So, I certainly agree that there are times it's the right thing to do to ground your teenager. Okay? Period. It just is sometimes. Even when it's the right thing, even when if you line up 100 parents and everyone says, "Yup, that deserves to be grounded." Even when you do that, do you think that your teenager will look at you and say, "Hey, Dad, you know something? I want to thank you for grounding. I was getting a little out of hand. I was starting to make mistakes. I'm glad you drew me in a little bit. Thank you for grounding." Okay? That's never going to happen. The point is, you can make the exact right decision in parenting and disciplining the teenager. What you get from a teenager or a kid, and what you get from them is, you're terrible, you're wrong, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay? I talked about co-parenting. You need the other parent to support you. If it's not the other parent, okay, if it's a single parent family, if it's a divorced family, whatever it is, then it's an aunt, it's an uncle, it's a friend, it's a whatever. We need other people there to support us, to let us know that what we're doing is okay, because our kids aren't going to tell us that it's okay, even when it is. And someone else to kind of validate for us how hard this is. And it's okay to be exhausted. we should probably start wrapping up for this evening. I want to thank you for tuning in and watching this talk. We're going to have a couple more of these. We're going to have another one in January, in February, in March, and in April with other people from Crossroads. I hope you can join us then. Thank you very much.
They're all good.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you for letting me take those. When I don't have anyone here, it's